Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. This evening with a distinguished gentleman, we'll be discussing the Egyptian economy. We have a lot of mega projects that have been developed and are actually, some are still in progress. The effect of those mega projects on Egyptian economy, investment opportunities in the coming stage will be under discussion. With us in the studio is Dr. Mohamed Rushdy, who is a banking and economics expert, in addition to a professor of economics at Cairo University. A pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to say good evening for you and our audience, and to thank you and to the Point Team program for this kind of invitation.
A pleasure. We have a lot of mega projects that have been developed in Egypt over the past few years. The pace has been quite aggressive in 2022 and 2021. We had a statement today that said even that the balance of trade deficit fell compared to last year. It was 2.9 and versus 3.5 respectively. How are we doing economically with that? Before we go into sectorial developments, overall economically, if we look at the economic portfolio from a holistic approach, so to speak, how do you see us going?
Actually, first of all, what currently happening, we are being the fruits of the economic reform.
Okay.
I would like to take you and our audience through this journey. Part of this journey, which is the mega projects.
Yes.
Actually, the economic reforms started with the devaluation. After the devaluation, the government think how to absorb the liquidity from the market, the excess in liquidity from the market. They increased the interest rate for deposits, actually. In a short term, they implemented the inverted yield curve. Let me tell you and our audience how they do it, actually, in a nutshell. But before illustrating this, one of the most important things that I would like to share with our audience, which is one of the famous quotes for strategic planning science, was called Henry Mintzberg. It is easy to plan, but it is difficult to implement.
Okay.
The challenge was in the implementation. As I told you and our audience, we started with the inverted yield curve. What is the inverted yield curve? Actually, if you are seeing a positive outlook for the economy, you shouldn't pay a lot of debt, cost of debt, to increase your cost of debt on a long term. The long term, actually, the government, with coordination with Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank of Egypt, they decided to pay for the short term, for example, 3 years. The interest rate is higher than the long term, as we raised up that if you are putting your money for 10 years, you will get interest rate higher than 3 years. But this is negatively will impact our balance of payment and the cost of debt. They started to decrease the interest rate for long term and increase it for short term. This is positively reflected on what? This is positively reflected to absorb the liquidity. In addition to, it's increased the deposit base in the central bank and the banking industry, which lead to decrease the gray economy, which is part of the financial inclusion. This is in addition to the impact of this simply that the deposit base increased to reach 5.5 trillion as far as I recall, and the foreign currency reserve, which should reach to almost $40 billion instead of 19 billions before the devaluation, which is almost more than 130% increase. And this is positively reflected to absorb the foreign currency and dollars from the household segment. And based on that, this is kind of mixing or combining the gray economy with the official economy, which reflected on tax and reflected on monitoring everything in a proper way. In addition to this is reflected in a good way to increase the GDP growth. And all of those things reflected to finance the mega projects as one of the most important things to finance the mega projects, which is the sovereigns. What is the sovereigns? The treasury bills and governmental bonds. And who is the most important investor in this part, which is banking industry. From when the banking sector, they getting the money from the household segment actually. By this way, we try to finance the mega projects. One of the most important mega projects, which is Suez Canal, the new airports, the new museum, Egyptian museum. Actually, we have a lot of investment in the infrastructure, which positively reflected on creating more jobs, and in addition to the renewable energy. This is the most important thing, which is aligned with the global trend, which is the sustainability, which is the most important thing that the whole global community trying to focus on sustainability and how to go green. And the latest conference that President Sisi attended
COP26.
COP26 at Glasgow, which is they are focusing how to focus on the renewable energy. One of the most important quotes for, as far as I recall, Armstrong author, we are not inheriting the land from our conservative. We are lending it from our children. We have to keep it, and we have to keep the resources for them. All of those things, which is reflected positively on what? On bringing the FDI and letting the investor, to motivate the investor to get more FDI, and positively reflected in creating jobs, decreasing the inflation rate. Those are tiny things, but positively reflected on our GDP growth also.
Let's take sector by sector. Maybe a sector that you don't directly work in, but a sector which we're all concerned with nowadays after COVID-19, which is the medical sector. Not only is Egypt contributing now to the production of COVID-19 vaccines, and this is an initiative that we took not just to cover local needs, but also to cover needs of our brothers in Africa. As President Sisi recently said in a UN conference, in the Security Council conference, that unfortunately those who have are not sharing the vaccine enough with the deprived or the less fortunate, if we can put it that way. Also, Egypt is developing the largest private medical city in the Middle East. Worth noting that this city will be completed in 7 to 10 years, and it will provide job opportunities for around 13,000 people. Something like this reform in the medical sector, in addition to lots of other things like the private insurance, which is the public medical insurance policy, which is which actually started in Port Said and that area, and I think there is a time plan where within a few years all Egyptians will have medical insurance that takes them even to private hospitals. I mean, it's going to be a uniform system for all Egyptians. How is this development in the medical sector, in your opinion? How is this helping us in economic reform? What kind of FDI can we have in that sector, for example, in your opinion?
In my humble opinion, I believe if you would like to build a country, you have to focus on two things, which is health and education. we are focusing in both of them with the right way, and we did a great investment in this. We increased the budget of health in addition to the mega project for vaccinations and many things. Those tiny things, especially on the medical side, especially when currently we are in a pandemic, our way out to overcome this pandemic, which is the vaccination and the precautions that the citizen should take care of it. Eventually, these investments created a lot of jobs. In addition to, it positively reflected that we have a plan and we have a vision that will impact impact our country in a good way to get FDIs and create more jobs. And this is reflected positively if we can, part of it, the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate, as far as I recall, in 2013, which had reached 13.4%, currently it's around 7.5%.
Yes.
This is
the projects are absorbing lots of labor.
And when you are doing something like that in hospitality or whatever, in health or whatever, when you are focusing on this, you are creating job. It's an economic wheel cycle. You create jobs, you are let the vendors, the suppliers work everywhere, the transportations, all people are working. And this is in addition to the mega project for NSH, National Social Health.
Yes.
This is one of the most important things to give and provide our citizen the good health care that required for them. This is a global trend in European country. I'm so happy to see something like that. I believe
how we coped with the pandemic, because the greatest economies were tested by COVID-19. Some countries reached a stage whereby serious supplies of basic necessities, I mean, it was catastrophic. I mean, you would walk into a supermarket, there is not enough food. Let's be to the point. Some people had a problem finding toilet paper. How Egypt handled the pandemic is a reflection of what? Economically.
actually you are hitting a nerve.
The toilet paper nerve?
No, I'm saying that how they manage, how the Egyptian government manages this pandemic, despite the fact, and we are considered as an developing countries.
Yes.
If we compare it with the developed countries, we achieved GDP growth around 2%, despite the fact of the pandemic.
Yes, which
and
is
the great economies,
they don't do that.
They didn't do that. They have negative growth. This is by, I believe, it focuses on many things, which is the main pillar for this, the strategic vision for the government and the presidential leadership to balance between the precautions, the acquired precautions, and to let the economic wheel cycle work. And this was a great challenge, how to compare that, and in addition to the part of F&B, food and beverage, actually, the food, which is the main security for people, the essential need. If we can illustrate the Maslow pyramid hierarchy of needs, one of the most important things that you have to find your food. Yes. And then after that, security, and then belonging, till reach to self-actualization. If you didn't find your food, you will not do anything. And this is what the government was focusing on, to let the most important things to prepare, to work and take the precautions to work and produce the food, and let the supermarkets to sell it, and the pharmacy, they focus on food and health. Those are the most important things. By this way, we try to achieve a little bit growth, and we have prepared a lot of contingency plan. This is one of the things that that should be give the credit to the Egyptian leadership and the government, that we have a contingency plan, and this is shows how you can manage the crisis, which is called the crisis management. This is, we do it in a proper way by letting the most important sectors in the country to work in an efficient way,
Yes.
and to decrease little bit the number of employees and let it like shifts or whatever to keep the social distancing, in addition to don't stop the productivity for people.
We managed to even reach a stage whereby, I mean, today it was announced, food exports to the European Union grew to $4.37 million, which is an increase in the last 8 months by 31%. So not only are you covering your internal needs,
Yes,
but you also managed to revamp
and
the agri sector, especially,
yes,
which we were complaining about, and now it is generating.
it's generating a lot. Actually, we are not. We were complaining that in a part of agriculture, in terms of that we would like mainly to focus on the most profitable things. As you and our audience know, that the GDP structure consists of 3 main things, important pillars, which is the agriculture, the industrial part, and the services. In the developed countries, the most important and the most chunk, which is the services.
Yes.
Especially in the part of the technology, this is that get the most important revenue. But in the current situation, which is the pandemic, you have to have the essential needs, which is agriculture, and this is part which was quite crucial for us and the countries and the other countries, especially the developed countries, and we were trying to support them and support Africa, and we are trying to do a lot of things which is positively impacted on us, and they sent in, it's a mutual benefit. They
Yes.
send a lot of things, and this is positively send a positive signal to the global community that we are working and we are on the right track.
Yes. You spoke of energy. Egypt not only has established the biggest power plants in the region, we have a concentrated solar power plant worth $1.2 billion. We have been developing our electricity grid. We have a project worth $202 million. That will be, we have 9 high voltage substations in different governorates in Egypt. We reached a stage whereby moving from rationing electricity in 2012 and so,
Yes.
to exporting energy. How will this help us in boosting economic development in the future?
Actually, one of the most important things for any industry or the technology part, that you have to have energy.
Yes.
If you have energy, you are encouraging people, and the cost of energy is not that quite expensive like other countries. This is one of the most important things. If you would like to get an investor to Egypt or any country, what you will assess? You will assess there's a global competitiveness points that any investor see it, or there's a global competitiveness report. By the way, the global competitiveness report, as far as I recall, we have a great level on it. We advanced around 20 places in
Our
2020.
economic rating.
Yes.
For those who are not aware, how does the economic ranking or rating shift up or down? I mean, there was a time when we were shifting down and now we're moving up, back up again. What is the criteria for economic evaluation, if we can put it that
Actually,
way?
we would like to differentiate between two things. The first thing, which is the global competitiveness ranking. The global competitive ranking, which is Egypt has jumped around 20 places to be number 82 among 141 countries. This is a report that submitted to globally to be available for all investors to see the competitiveness of each country. Part of this assessment, which is the source of energy, the costs of debt, if you would like to lend, the infrastructure, the availability of laborers, the manpower, and the cost of the manpower, and the cost of the energy, those things, this is called the competitiveness or global competitiveness. And about the part of the rating, which is if you have a competitive edge and you have advanced global competitiveness, this is positively reflected on your credit rating. We could see easily the impact. I told you and our audience at the beginning, we are being the fruits of the economic reforms.
Yes.
And this is part of the economic reforms. Our credit rating, which is by Moody's and Standards, one of Standard & Poor's, which is positive B outlook. This is positively reflected on our rating, and this is just we are sending a positive message or a positive signal to the global community that we are on the right track. We could attract more deposits, and for the IMF, by the way, for International Monetary Fund, we are sending a positive message that the most of the loans and debts that we took from them, which is positively reflected on the infrastructure, reflected on the education, reflected on the health. I could share a lot of things. To build the country, you have to focus on industry, education, health. And by the way, we have a lot of development in education. The education budget increased by around 65%. As far as I recall, it was in 2014, 2015 year, it was 40 billion. It reached 65 billion. The increase rate around 65% growth.
Yes.
And the number of universities increased. Public universities has reached 27 universities, and with an increase for universities, and the private reached to around 35 with increased 17 universities. This is in addition to
17 strong faculties we have to mention, because now we're specializing. It's not just a matter of setting a university, but a specialized faculty to advance the country economically.
And this is part of the investment. If you come to a country, you are an investor, you have to find the qualified manpower, the labor, who will work. You will get an expert, and this is positively reflected on what? The unemployment rate that I told you it decreased, and our audience, it decreased from 13.4% in 2013 to reach 7.4%. It looks like a wheel. All parts should be together to let the wheel to move. This is what happened in education, on energy, in addition to political stability. We have we return it back, by the way, on the political stability. We turn it back to play our role in Africa, especially in Africa, in Europe, in many countries. We achieved a lot of things for foreign affairs. We obtaining a non-permanent seat in the United Nations, in addition to assuming chairmanship at the United Security Council and
chairmanship of the African Union.
Yes, a lot of things. That's what I'm saying with you and our audience. The most tiny things that we are doing, which is called, I can say it, the compound effect. We are building that step by step, as a lot of people saying, slowly but surely. And the compound effect, simply to explain it for you and our audience, let me change the role, and can I ask you, if I provide you 1 penny with compound effect, which means the 1 penny will be 2, and the 2 will be 4, and so on, till 31 days, 1 month mainly, or $1 million, what you will take?
I'll take the compound effect.
Perfect. Why the compound effect? At the 28th, the 28th day, it will increase more than $1 million. And at the last day, the 31 day, it will be more than $10 million.
So it's not a short-term win, it's a long-term.
Yes.
It's a long-term vision.
Yes. This is what we have to do with. We are doing things slowly, as you said, but surely. This is what called the compound effect. We are building, and we are bearing the fruits gradually. By the way, we bearing the fruits like something which is increasing on cost of debt. The cost of debt from the GDP growth, which reached around 100 and around more than 20% of the GDP growth, it decreased by more than 20%. In addition to, the government did a program which is Takaful and Karama to support low income,
yes,
socially. We are being the fruits, but it will take time to feel it on all levels. But actually, we can see it in the infrastructure, in the energy, the employment rate, the numbers.
I was going to talk to you because one of the issues that we're also addressing is we're not only developing the industrial sector or the agri sector or the energy sector, but Egypt is being developed as well. The governorates are getting a facelift. Geographically, we're expanding. We have 37 new smart cities, roads, transportation, new metro lines, the monorail. I mean, it's going at a very, very fast pace. But one of the things that the president keeps emphasizing on is smart, digital, less human contact. I mean, eventually you're supposed to just sit at home, go online, and just get all your paperwork done. We're really digitizing not only the government, but even cities. This is the new trend. How is this moving Egypt?
Actually, the digitalization, in my humble opinion, it's the new era for our world. This is a new era. Everything will be digitalized. One of the jokes that spread during the pandemic, actually in USA, who is leading your digital transformation in your company, which is CEO, COO, or COVID-19, which is COVID-19, yes. But actually, in Egypt, despite the fact of COVID-19, we have a great plan for digital transformation. Part of this mainly to focus on how to automate everything, and part of it, which is the financial inclusion, how to get the gray economy. Do you know, and our audience, that around 75%
that's the
of
informal
our
economy.
Informal economy, yes, thank you, which is the informal economy.
Yes.
And how you can get it. Part of it, of this things that the government did to issue Visa card. Visa card, which is the payment, you have to pay everything through this card. This is part of the electronic payment, and all the salaries and pensions and all the governmental things should be paid through it. And this is with coordination with Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance enforced a new law or regulation, part of it, that if you are paying, as far as I recall, more than 500 Egyptian pound, you have to pay penalty, like 5 or 10% from the amount that you are paying. You are trying to do it you are trying to force people to go for digital. This is which positively will reflect on our economy and everything. You know, if the informal economy come and combine with the formal economy, the tax will be increased. The tax income will increase actually, and everything will be monitored in a proper way, and this will benefit return back in education, infrastructure, energy, everything. It's, as I told you and our audience, it's like the economic wheel cycle actually. And it will reflect to creating more new jobs and decrease the unemployment rate, and will let the FDI to come to Egypt in a smooth way. You have everything. One of the most important thing, and the last thing, the legislation actually. And the government, actually the legal parliament approved a group of new laws to support the economic reform and attract FDI, especially through GAFI, General Authority for Investment. Those tiny things which is reflected positively in our economy. This is one of the most important thing, to go for digitalization and work in digitalization. One of the things that, especially in the banking industry, this is called, which is Uber moment. What is Uber moment? One of the most CEOs, important CEOs for a multinational bank, say that if the banks are not going to digitalize their services, they will be like the comparison between the normal taxi and Uber. It will be little bit decreased. If we are not going for digitalization, we will be isolated.
Yes, definitely.
We don't have solution.
We don't have the luxury.
And honestly, the government was focusing, and the presidential leadership, they have a clear vision despite the fact of COVID-19 pandemic. They have a clear vision to digitalize everything, and they know well how this is positively will impact our economy.
Can Egypt reach a stage whereby it is the economic gate to Africa or to this region?
I believe this is a plan for this is the government plan and the presidential leadership to best utilize the location of Egypt and to be the business hub for Africa. You know that if we are comparing the aging pyramid for Africa compared by the European ages pyramid, actually you'll find that Africa is a potential country. The majority of the nation or people, they are youth, they can build, and this is how they are. The European countries, they are considering Africa as an emerging market. Why? Because they can, if they are manufacturing or doing things and they couldn't find the market to sell it, what they will do? They will leave it. They will have a great losses. They are focusing to develop in Africa, and they have potential to Africa to sell everything. And currently in Africa, the awareness level increased in the majority of African countries. Instead of the fact a lot of countries, they are selling or export, actually they are exporting the raw materials. They are working to get the know-how to manufacture it and sell it to the European countries.
Yes.
This is one of the most important thing. And Egypt has a great location, has a great manpower, vision, infrastructure, a lot of many things that can help us to be a business hub or the gateway to Africa.
A conference, businessmen conference in Hungary to showcase our potential, our investment opportunities. If you were to draft a presentation highlighting this is the area, if you were to select 2 or 3 areas where right now an investor is looking at us, this is where you can guarantee large numbers on your investment. Which areas? Where's the future in Egypt?
Actually, the future in Egypt, part of it, actually, I would like to rephrase it to focus, which is on a lot of industries, which is possibly to be win-win situation, to impact the investor and the country.
Yes,
actually.
of course.
A lot of industries can be achieve a great return, or the ROI, the return on investment, will be quite high, which is one of those things, which is the technology, which is the most important thing. The technology part, the cost of it, it's not that quite high, but the margin, which is quite high. In addition to the energy, oil and the renewable energy, which is the global trend, in addition to the tourism part, the tourism sector, actually. The tourism sector,
It's one of the sectors that suffered in COVID-19.
yes, actually they cover, not in Egypt only, there is a lot of European countries that depend on tourism
Yes.
only. They cornered. A lot of them, they lost their jobs, they couldn't get money, and the government, they couldn't support them because it's their economy depends on tourism. And actually one of the most important things that you have ABC investments, or if you build the economy, you have to diversify the sources of income, tourism, industry, and renewable energies, a lot of things. To cut the long story short, we have, if there's an investor would like to come to invest in Egypt, there's a lot of things, which is energy part, in addition to industry part and technology, in addition to tourism, a lot of those things, they have a great return, and those are the potential industries or sectors that you can focus, and their ROI is quite high and positively will impact both the investor and the Egyptian economy.
We have a couple of minutes left, but before we wrap up, another sector which is important is, and it's a soft power, which is the entertainment sector. $20 billion are being invested in the new capital, the administrative capital, for an entertainment city, which will house all kind of entertainment and cultural facilities. How will entertainment affect our economy, taking into account that some messages can be put in drama? Hollywood has planted stereotypes, for example, about our part of the world through drama. Can this be a source of clarifying certain issues so that people would feel more secure about investing, not only in Egypt, but and understanding this part of the world?
Actually, let me quote you, it's the soft power.
Yes.
It's help in 2 things. The first thing, which is the soft power, you can influence globally through media, actually. And if we return it back couple of years, we turn it back, we were influencing people through our movies, or return it back for 60s and 40s. We are mainly focusing and impact a majority of Arab countries, and a lot of people who are fans for the Arab movies by our culture, and we can implement everything and send the positive messages or send a lot of things through this. This is in addition to that this industry, one of the most important industries, that its shape will be changed. We will, for example, couple or about 5 or 10 years, we are waiting the movie at, for example, here at Nile TV, at the first channel, at whatever, at second local channel, to watch the movie. Currently, you can watch the movie at any time, the movie that you would like to see it, through new applications, through entertainments, different entertainment programs, and you are paying for it.
Yes.
And this is the global, and this is the new era for the entertainment part. And globally, by the way, the digitalization will impact the entertainment and the hospitality. In addition to the education, everything will be different, and we have to capitalize on this to get step forward and to invest on media and a lot of things like education, everything, and health. Those things will positively impact our GDP growth and will positively impact the Egyptian citizen in a big way.
Dr. Mohamed Rushdy, thank you very much for your fruitful input tonight and your optimistic outlook. Pleasure to have you with us on To The Point. I'd like to thank you, the viewers, and a few months ago we witnessed a historic event, which was the Mummies Parade. And worth noting, Egypt is bracing itself for another historical event, which is the launching of the new Avenue of the Sphinxes in Luxor. This is an event that should not be missed if you're planning to do any travel plans. Keep that in mind. I'd like to wish you a very pleasant evening, and we'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night.